Okay, have you ever been completely trapped at a party, just exchanging the exact same repetitive pleasantries, and you're standing there thinking, why do we even bother talking if we aren't actually saying anything real? Well, today we are decoding the hidden psychological matrix that dictates literally every conversation we have. Based on Dr. Eric Berne's groundbreaking work, Games People Play, we are going to uncover the subconscious rules governing our interactions and, more importantly, how to break free from them to achieve the deep, meaningful conversations we actually crave. I really want you to ask yourself, why do we fear awkward silences so deeply? Why is just sitting there with another person, without any structured activity, so overwhelmingly uncomfortable that we immediately scramble to fill the void with, well, meaningless chatter? We talk about the weather, we argue about sports, we debate cars, we talk endlessly, but we are absolutely terrified of actually being vulnerable. And the reason for this goes way deeper than just good manners. It's actually a matter of sheer psychological and biological survival. It comes down to this genuinely shocking biological truth from Dr. Berne. He said, and I quote, "If you are not stroked, your spinal cord will shrivel up." Crazy, right? But research on infants, like the famous studies by Renee Spitz, actually showed that babies deprived of handling and emotional contact sink into irreversible decline. And guess what? Us grown-ups, we are no different. We suffer from stimulus hunger. We literally need social contact, what Berne calls strokes, which can be anything from a physical hug to a simple nod of recognition just to survive. Just as we need physical food to keep our bodies from deteriorating, we need an exchange of strokes to keep our minds from unraveling. This massive hunger is exactly what drives us to settle for shallow interactions rather than holding out for deep conversation. So let's look at the mechanics of this in part 1, the code, and the voices in your head. To get these life-saving strokes, we obviously have to interact. But who is actually doing the talking? See, we all like to think of ourselves as one unified person, right? But in reality, we carry around 3 distinct active personalities inside our minds. Berne calls these our ego states. First up is the parent. This is copied directly from your actual parents. It directs behavior, throwing out phrases like "do as I say." Next is the adult. Think of this as your objective inner computer. It processes data and computes probabilities to help you survive the real world, like reminding you to look both ways before crossing the street. And finally, the child. This is the archaic relic of the little kid you once were, full of intuition, creativity, and spontaneous rebellion. So think about this. When your boss criticizes you, which voice actually answers? Your logical adult, your scolding parent, or your defensive child? Which brings us to part 2, the glitch, and what happens when conversations completely break down. Because things get really interesting when these specific ego states start talking to the ego states of other people. Now, when the matrix flows perfectly, we get what's called complementary transactions. Imagine person A's adult speaks to person B's adult, like asking for a surgical scalpel in an operating room and the other person hands it over. The lines of communication are perfectly parallel. As long as transactions stay complementary, communication flows smoothly and indefinitely. And hey, it doesn't even have to be adult to adult. It could be a feverish child ego state asking a nurturing parent ego state for a glass of water. As long as the response matches the expectation, you're golden. But here is the glitch. Communication instantly halts when a crossed transaction occurs. The wires literally get crossed. And guys, this right here is the root cause of almost every social difficulty, marital fight, and workplace dispute in the world. It happens when, say, an adult asks an objective question, but instead of the other person's adult answering, their defensive child flares up in response to a perceived parent. Here is a classic example to put this into perspective. An adult-to-adult exchange is super simple. You ask an objective question, "Do you know where my cufflinks are?" You get a factual answer, "On the desk." Boom, perfect. But if that exact same objective question somehow activates the other person's defensive child, they might snap back with, "Why don't you keep track of your own things?" You see what happened? The vectors cross. That logical adult conversation about cufflinks is completely dead, and an emotional fight just started out of absolutely nowhere. So how do we cope with this? That leads us to part 3, the illusion and the hidden games we play. Because we humans desperately want to avoid those painful crossed wires, but we are also terrified of the unshielded vulnerability required for deep conversation, we compromise. We resort to structuring our time by playing subconscious games. We use ulterior transactions, basically operating on 2 levels at once. Take a salesman, for example. He might use an angular transaction by saying, "This one is better, but you honestly can't afford it." Now, on the surface, the social level, that's an adult stating an objective fact. But the ulterior, psychological vector, that is secretly aimed straight at the customer's defiant child ego state.
The child gets hooked and immediately thinks, "Oh, I'll show this arrogant guy. I'll take it." The game is successfully played and the trap is sprung. Let's dissect a super common party game called Why Don't You, Yes But. It is an absolute masterclass in hidden payoffs. Here's how it works. Step 1, the provocation. Someone presents a problem. Step 2, the indulgence. A wise parent tries to help by offering a solution. Well, why don't you do this? But the person playing the game is actually operating from an inadequate child ego state, so they bat away every single solution with a yes, but. This loops until step 3, the disconcertion, where everyone just gives up. And the hidden payoff? That inadequate child gets to prove that absolutely no one can dominate them, and everyone else is rendered completely helpless. These games absolutely run our home lives too. Take the marital game, If It Weren't For You. A spouse might constantly complain, if it weren't for you demanding I stay home, I could be out having fun. On the surface, yeah, it just sounds like complaining. But psychologically, it's a massive self-defense mechanism. She actually subconsciously chose a restrictive partner so she could safely surrender to authority. By playing this exact game, she completely avoids confronting her own deep-seated neurotic fears of actual public situations.
So why on earth do we put ourselves through this? Well, because these games provide massive psychological payoffs. Internally, they maintain our mental stability. Externally, they act as a shield against raw, terrifying intimacy. Biologically, they guarantee we get those precious strokes so our spinal cords don't shrivel up. And socially, they structure our time so we don't have to face the terrifying void of silence. Basically, we play these games to survive.
But what if you want more than just survival? That brings us to part 4, the awakening, and how to actually escape the game. If you are exhausted by the underlying dishonesty of all these games, Dr. Byrne defines the ultimate goal as true intimacy. This is game-free, autonomous contact. It is that deep, transformative conversation we fundamentally crave. But it only happens when your inner child is finally freed from the heavy, programmed strictures of your parent and adult ego states. Intimacy is the complete and utter absence of games. It's a candid, unshielded sharing of the present moment. And Byrne actually notes that this is the most perfect yet absolutely rarest form of human living.
To achieve this kind of autonomy, you essentially have to master 3 things. First up, awareness. This is the ability to see and hear reality directly, like a child hearing a bird sing for the very first time, instead of just processing it the way you were taught to. Second is spontaneity. This is having the ultimate freedom to consciously choose which ego state you want to express, rather than just reacting on autopilot. And finally, intimacy. This means making the brave, conscious choice to sacrifice the easy, manipulative rewards of your games so you can step right into the unshielded reality of genuine connection. You have to overthrow your family's historical programming, abandon the safety net, and step completely into the now.
So I want to leave you with this final kind of provocative thought to analyze your own behavior today. The next time you greet your partner, or sit in a meeting, or complain to a friend, look really closely at the transaction. Are your arrows parallel, or are they crossed? Are you actually having a deep, vulnerable conversation, or are you just playing a game to protect your inner child from the world? The choice to wake up from the matrix is entirely yours.